Hi everyone, welcome to the Plum Edit Sunday series. This week we're here with Lottie. Lottie, please introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your work.
Hi, I'm Lottie Mac. I'm an artist and curator. My work predominantly explores language and landscape, to put it really briefly, and that's kind of explored through like tuftings, as you can see around us, steel, metalwork and woodwork as well. So sometimes it's like functional sculpture, which is kind of like furniture, and sometimes it's wall hangings and things like that, all exploring language and mother tongue and all that goodness, which I'm sure we'll get into.
Yeah, cool. In terms of like your inspirations, how do you find that they manifest in your work?
When I was thinking about my inspirations, I feel like when you're just starting, you're like, oh, like these are the artists that influenced me 1, 2 and 3, and I think you're kind of drilled into the fact that you have to have like an artist as the inspiration, or like, I don't know, when this conversation comes to be, it's like, oh, my inspiration is, my answers used to be like Ai Weiwei and Yayoi Kusama, because it was like activist art, and then it's like spatial installation, like involving the audience and like talking about important topics. Now my work doesn't look anything like theirs, but I think it was like their thinking about talking about things that are important, such as like migrant crisis and things like that, and then articulating it in beautiful ways so people can take in that kind of information and stuff and digest it in all these different ways. But yeah, but when I was thinking about it, I was like, my inspiration is island predominantly, and things like that.
Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, island in the state of its beauty of the landscape and its people. For something that kind of got me thinking about it was all these millions of things, but one area I like focus on is like the beauty, like how small the island is when you deep like how many amazing poets and writers have come from such a tiny island that has a population smaller than the city of London. You're just like, when you deep there, you're like, damn, like that's actually crazy. Like how is so much beauty coming from like the mouths of these people? And so I kind of like began to explore that and explore like the Irish's relationship with the mother tongue and the loss of that language through colonialization and things like that. And so yes.
Yeah, and can you tell us a bit about your most recent collection?
Yeah, my most recent collection, it's around us in like little pops, some of it. It was called Tender Steps, and essentially it was solely focusing on like the beautiful landscape of Ireland. It gets a lot always talking about like big topics, especially ones that are like political, somewhat political and things like that. So it's like sometimes you want to take a moment and just kind of look at the beauty around you and kind of take a moment of peace as an artist, but also for your viewer, because it's like constantly taking in all this stuff. So yeah, this was like largely about landscape and like abstracting natural plant forms and things like that. So it was kind of set into like 3 parts, the collection, and there was metal frames, these ones, that had like 2 pieces of countries like blended together. So it was kind of like questioning that idea of like where you're from and heritage and the importance of that or lack thereof to an extent, because it's kind of about like, okay, cool, it's like culture is kind of what you're given as a person and things like that. So there's like the metal frame with the countries and things like that, and then we have like tufted wall hangings as well, and they just abstracted plant forms, and then there was like metal sheets. I'm trying to see if there's one to hand with like text on. I think it's hidden, but with like 2-word poems on and things like that, like holding faith and touch of reason and things like that. So it's like short poems, and other things are more like abstracted plant forms and landscape and things. But a lot of my works are quite big, so they're either like functional sculptures, like big things that like what are people going to do with a sculpture if they're not a gallerist. And then there's like massive tuftings that are like this big and take me weeks to make and cost thousands and thousands of pounds. And so this collection was kind of making pieces that were smaller and more accessible for people with not loads of space to hang massive artworks. So if you have smaller spaces, making spaces works for those spaces, and making works that people could afford more easily, because I want people to own my work, and I want my work to live in people's homes and like grow with people's families. Because it's like, you know, when you're growing up and you have that like one random artwork that my mum would have gotten like from charity shops and stuff like that. And this is like this really weird picture, and it's like I probably don't even know if I like the work, but then that artwork has been with our family now for like 25 years.
Yeah, so you grow an attachment, right?
Exactly, yeah. So I kind of wanted this collection to be an access point for people to start owning artwork and it to be mine that they own.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
Yeah, that was like the approach to it, at least, yeah.
Yeah,
so,
wonderful.
Yeah.
Can you tell us more about how a piece begins for you? Does it begin with a feeling? Does it begin with, literature? Does it begin with a thought or an emotion? Like, how does it kind of come to conception?
So it constantly changes, but I guess there's like three main areas that different pieces go off, and it would be, one of them is like my emotion. So say something's happening to me or the world, or something that I want to speak about, and I need to respond to that. So whether that will exist in, like, for example, like doing like an abstract painting to kind of explore like some fluid like gestures to like get these like abstract plant forms. It's like that, sometimes that comes rather than me having to like write a poem about it all the time. It's like sometimes just move your body a little bit, and that's where I get some abstract paintings that turn into the tuftings and things. So there's like a purely emotive state of it. And then other times it comes from books, and I call like this part like a collaboration with the past. And so essentially I'll go back and read old poetry. Most of the time, like 99% of the time, it's like old Irish poetry, obviously, and by female poets, because they're also not spoken about as much. And I had this really good like book that is just like full of all the best ones that I kind of always go back to in moments where I don't have anything to say, but greatness has already been said. I kind of collaborate with these poets 200 years later, or whatever, and remix that like a word from their poem, or just use part of their poem and articulate it into like a furniture piece or a tufting or a sculpture and things like that. And then the third part is this clearly me having something very straightforward that I want to say and I want to make clear, and articulating that either very clearly. For example, I made this like wooden stool a few weeks ago, and it says they can't stop the coming of spring, which comes from an old like saying, and not by me, an old saying. Yeah, so that was on the stool, and I wanted to make that very clear. But other times I want to say something and I kind of want to abstract it and make the viewer kind of fight for it and find it. So there's kind of like three layers to it, I guess. So one's very emotive, one's referring to old literature, and one's trying to be like as clear as possible with what I'm trying to say.
Beyond being an artist, you're also a facilitator. Can you tell us about how you create spaces and how you kind of hold space for people?
Yeah, so I've been curating for so I've been making art for like 10 years, probably 11 years or something. 27 now, so I started when I was like 15 or something, like seriously doing it like every day after school and not just part of the curriculum or whatever. And which would still be valid. But yeah, and then I started curating about 6 years ago, and it was kind of like I didn't really know that curation was necessarily a path or that a thing that someone does, or it's like someone's job, I guess. And then I got access to a space. The space was too big just to show my work, and I was also like, why would I just take up this space? So I invited like different female artists who I knew were making great work around me at the time. This was like 2019, and we used that to raise funds for Solace Women's Aid. And then it kind of went on to being like, okay, cool, so a curator needs a space and they need to know artists. And then I started to find spaces and I knew artists, so it kind of just like flowed from that, and I kind of started to develop like curation as like a one of the mediums for my own practice as well. So as well as it being like an opportunity to uplift other artists, because I've been blessed enough to be like around so many amazing artists. Living in London is like one of the blessings. So yeah, as long as it being a moment for that, it also became like a moment of like living research. So I had a podcast called like Modes of Making, and it was basically exploring the process of like how creatives do what they do, and like learning the logistics of that. And then I was like, okay, cool, that kind of got me thinking about the process and how important the process is, and if anything the process is way more interesting sometimes than the end result. It's always interesting because people always love to look in like an artist studio, for example, because now you're like, okay, cool, now I see it all together, it kind of makes sense. Whereas you can see a piece on its own, it's kind of something completely different. So I started like looking into the process being like the artwork over the final thing in the gallery, and did like a show with multiple artists exploring that from all of their point of views. So yeah, curation and facilitation, two different things kind of, but curation was I either kind of use it as like a moment to spotlight other artists who are great around me, or as a moment for us all to voice our insights and opinions on different topics and things. And that also has grown into facilitation, which is like workshops, and like I kind of view like the little publication zine things that I do as well as a form of facilitation, because it's bringing people together to talk on particular subjects and things like that. But yeah, workshops have been really, really great as well, because it's kind of like, that's a true embodiment of like collectivist thinking. It's like curation can take you so far, but workshops allow you to share a skill, and especially do it with people like who are younger or in need of accessing art loads, like more than the next person maybe. So yeah, that's how I kind of, my approach to curation and how I got there ish.
Yeah, it's great to hear about kind of the natural evolution of like going through the steps.
Yeah, completely.
In terms of you right now, what are you curious about?
Right now I'm curious, I've been looking a lot into like the Book of Kells. It's like an old like religious text from Ireland, and it's kind of like the font within that is really interesting. So within my own artwork, the font I use is like one that I designed myself. It's like a hybrid of the Old English and the Old Irish. It was kind of like a joke to kind of comment. It's like a dark humor, like kind of comment on like that kind of relationship. And so I've done like 3 iterations of that font now, like developing it and bringing it further. And so now I'm looking into a lot of like old Irish scripture and like knotwork and the like Celtic design, to kind of see how I can introduce that into my next font design and like abstract the font even further, to kind of make like the English speaker struggle to access the English word, because it's something that like, I don't speak any other language, but it's like most English people don't, and so we always have access to it. So like kind of playing with that like exploration into the English language and making an English speaker struggle for it, like everyone else has to struggle for things. So I'm kind of curious about like ancient texts, the use of like intertwining of like nature and natural forms into the typography and stuff. It's like, you know, you look at like old storybooks and it's like once upon a time and that first
it's really like ornate and fancy.
Yeah, exactly. And there's like always kind of like vines wrapped around it and flowers and stuff. So it's like, okay, cool, I've been doing typography, I've been doing like kind of natural forms, how now can I kind of bridge these two things together but in like a modern way as well, not just kind of redoing what was done, like how can I make this of the time now and stuff. But okay, I'm really excited to see like what comes of that. Me too, honestly.
Yeah, wonderful, thank you so much.
Oh no, thank you.